Super. Welcome to Personnel Board. So the first item on the agenda, item 23, is apologies for absence, and we've had apologies, I believe, from Pauline Jorgensen and from Yusra Salman. Super. Everybody else is here. The next point is minutes of the previous meeting, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of August 2024. I had one point that I wanted to make. Were there any other comments, questions on the minutes?
A good record, but really.
I apologise to Madeline already for being so hair-spitty, but it's on page 5 of this pack, and it's point 16. We were going to change a bullet point, and it's been written down to say there were only a few of this, and I think it should read there were only a few of these. So I think if everybody is happy with that amendment, I can propose. Does anybody want to second? Prue is seconding to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of August. Super. And yeah, so anybody against? And anybody abstaining? Super. Thanks, Lou. Okie doke. So are there any declarations of interest? Item number 25. No declarations of interest. I don't think we've had any public questions come through. No. And I don't think we've had any member questions come through either. Super. So the next item on the agenda is the People's Strategy. And this is very exciting. This is something which has been to the Personnel Board in its various iterations a number of times. This is the first People Strategy that the Council has had. And I'm handing over to Louise, I think, isn't it, to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this is our People Strategy that we're bringing before the committee. We've been through some extensive engagement with staff, and I've tried to make sure that is recorded in the report. It's been actually quite nice, actually, from the point of view of just being really positive about the feedback we have had from staff to get that type of engagement. I think the one thing just to sort of mention about the People Strategy, it's been very purposely kept very high level. And you will note that it is extremely high level from that point of view, and with the idea is that then we hang everything off of it with regard to then singular items that we would then need to do to show improvement. And what we want to do with our People Strategy, and we mention, is that we will also have a delivery plan that sits beneath it. So it actually states then annually what we are doing. And obviously we will be coming to Personnel Board, and when we come to Personnel Board with an item, we will be making sure we make the connection back to our People Strategy to demonstrate each time what it is that we're looking to achieve through that particular item. And hence, by keeping it that high level, it makes it nice and straightforward to actually do that. With regard to, as I say, we've had at least 1,200 interactions with staff, and that's sort of like, and that's me being quite reserved, because when I think about the colleague conference that we held, we had over 1,000 people actually attend that, and that was part of the main plenary session that we had. So I've maybe been just a little bit reserved with regard to those numbers, but I just sort of wanted to make sure that I think this has been on quite a journey, probably since I started at the council. I think we first came to Personnel Board in June 2023 with our proposals with regards to why we wanted to do it, and obviously the reason for why we have it. It states with regard to how the council will go about recruiting its staff, how it will look to retain its staff, how it will develop its staff, and it's just sort of clearly setting that out. So we've got 4 commitments that sort of make up the main framework of the People Strategy of we care, we share, we learn, and we belong. And then under each of those commitments, we set out a definition of what it actually means. the items that it actually includes, and then some of our success measures regarding how we will measure ourselves then against our success of actually sort of demonstrating work to those commitments. This is on a journey, and this will go to the executive if personnel board are in agreement. But I put the item before you, and obviously we'll take any questions that you may have.
Super, Stephen.
Not a question, Louise, just a couple of comments. The first is, as I've said before, I think, when you look at the people strategy, you wonder why on earth we didn't have one before. I suppose it's only by drawing one up one realises how important it is, and it is a shame we haven't had one earlier. I like the structure, I like the 4 themes, but I also like the way you lay it out in terms of what it means, what it's going to include, and how we measure success. I think that's a good approach. I think it is obviously very high level, but as you said, underneath it will hang particular action plans. So I think from my point of view, this is very good. And thank you very much for the work that's gone on to enable this to be brought before us. So I don't think there's anything I have that I want to object to in the least.
Thank you, Stephen. And Prue.
I think I would like to work for an organisation that has this sort of people strategy. So I think it's probably, it feels like it's the right sort of thing, and it's completely understandable. Yeah, I think it's a very good piece of work.
Sarah.
Yeah, and if I could just sort of, continue in that theme, the fact that you've had that level of engagement and feedback, I think is absolutely fantastic, and people really feel like it's theirs as well as yours. And just that final value of we belong, when you think about how you want people to really feel once they're in and have been through that journey, and you think about DE&I strategy, and you start off with equity, and where do you ultimately belonging is when all of those things have really fallen into place. So I just think it's a really good thing to be striving towards. So yeah, I think it's great.
Lou.
I'm not going to say anything different, but I think I really like the 4 themes and the way that you've spelled them out. I think, I sat and thought about it for a while, actually. I thought, yeah, they really make sense. At the beginning, I was this is really high level, but then I kind of understood why. And then the only comment I had was around the work-life balance, because that's really tricky, because it means something different to every person. So, yeah.
Super, thank you. And I think one of the things that Prue said there was it would be great to work for an organisation which is like this. And this is something that Louise and I were talking about the other day when we were discussing this, that actually does lay out what we can offer as an employer to the right kind of person. It links it back to we care about the great things that we do for our community. So it's a great place to work if what you want to do is to do good things for the residents. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody wants to say about this.
One final comment, which is the emphasis on not just recruiting good staff, but retaining them and growing them in the organisation is very welcome. I think one of the challenges for Wokingham as a small unitary authority is obviously keeping really good staff. Recruiting them first of all, but then keeping them, because we have quite a few things going against us in terms of the cost of housing in our area, competition from other neighbouring authorities like Bracknell, which are able to pay more because they have outer London waiting. So it's a challenge for us to get the really good, high quality people and then keep them and encourage them to stay and grow within the organisation. But I think having this will help us do that. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So shall we vote on the recommendation? The Personnel Board is asked that it recommends the people strategy to the executive for adoption. So super. Thank you very much. I think everybody's in favour. Do I need to note a propose from a seconder for that? I can propose and Stephen will second it. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next item on the board is also a pretty exciting one, which is constitution review. I'm extremely excited about it because it allows us to have substitutes in the main meeting. So obviously we've had substitutes for a while for interviews, but this is a proposal that we have substitutes in the main meeting. We've also, and I think this is in line with what a lot of other councils do, we've got a proposal here that we would allow the officers to shortlist for what we're currently calling the assistant director posts, with the idea that it cuts down on the number of statutory meetings that we have to progress things. Prue's got her hand up, so I'll let her come in immediately on that.
So it was on that specific point. Until only a few years ago, that is what we did. And it was changed relatively recently by a previous administration who wanted to have more hand in the appointment of assistant directors. And I think it's entirely sensible to revert to what we have normally done as a council.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So can I just clarify that point? So at the moment, the change that we're looking to make is that there's still an interview process that a personnel board will be involved in, but the shortlist meeting, other than because the exec member often is involved in that first part, and I think is valuable, and it's a valuable part of that. But yes, it's about reducing the statutory need for that shortlist. It doesn't mean you wouldn't be briefed, but you would still have the actual interview process to make the decision alongside the director and the chief exec. Is that correct interpretation?
I was going to say I very much welcome what I think is, as Prue said, a return to what existed until relatively recently. I don't really think elected members should be playing a key role in selecting in the way they were under the rules that were introduced relatively recently. I think this is a much more balanced and appropriate way of proceeding, so I'm very happy with that.
Okay, so it should allow the recruitment process, I think, to flow much more smoothly.
Yeah.
Speed is of the essence if you want to get the right.
Well, it's also there was a sense, certainly on my part, I opposed the change because I felt it was introducing an element of political interference in the process that I don't think is appropriate. So I'm very happy with the way things are now proposed.
Super. So we'll be going back to a tried and trusted way of doing things. And then I think the third thing is really it's an issue bringing personnel board up to date. Personnel is now a fairly old-fashioned term. I don't think I've worked in a personnel department since the 1980s. And proposal here is that we would seek to rename this body the Employment Committee. So I think that
just on that point, I'm relieved that we've not gone down to the Human Resources Committee. So I think that would that perhaps conveys the wrong impression of what we're doing. The employment is fine.
Super and Prue.
I would like to support the change from board to committee because it is a committee of the council appointed like all the other committees, and calling it a board just makes it seem different when it's not.
That's a really good point. Yep. And we've done quite a bit of talking already, but I was going to hand over to Louise to do an introduction of the work that she's done on this.
Yep. Okay, so just to talk through very briefly the process we will follow. So I'm bringing to Personnel Board the suggested changes to what is currently called Personnel Board terms. So terms of reference, and then we have Chapter 11, which is I'm going to get call it the wrong thing now, aren't I? It's what's it called? Chapter 11's the Officer Scheme of Delegation. Thank you. And it's just that obviously there's quite a lot of different changes in there. A lot of them are job title changes, where we're just updating it to make sure that it's got the right format. But also in Chapter 11, as you say, you see there's a scheme of delegation within it. And the bit that I'm referring to, it starts on page, let's just get my pages right. Page 68, which is the Officer Employment Procedure Rules. which reflects what Personnel Board do. And then 11.6, so just turning the page quickly, is delegated powers relating to staffing matters. Look, that's page 74. So those, you'll see I've done tracked changes on that so that you can see what we're looking to actually do. Some of it is where we're just trying to use the 3 C's. So from the point of view of just being, is it clarity, confidence and care? So it's just sort of making sure that we're writing it in a more simplistic way so it's understood with regard to what it is that we are doing. But also we've looked at the who, so actually looking to make sure we've got the right job titles. Also within the delegated powers, there are references to sickness absence and flexible working when we actually have separate policies that set out what are policies around that. So we don't need that within the Constitution. So I just feel that we can remove some of that excess information from this particular document. As I say, there's a lot of pages here, so I do appreciate that you may not have had a chance to look at all elements of it word for word. But I think the other sort of key thing, just to sort of be clear on within the Personnel Board terms as well, is that we've actually looked at redefining what reorganisations we bring it to Personnel Board, and I've made a suggestion, so I've just put a suggestion forward, just using current legislation as our sort of aim around that. I'm going to be silent now because I could keep talking about all the changes, but you possibly got questions, so it might be easier to do it that way.
Super, I can see Prue does.
So one bit you haven't mentioned is about the assistant directors and service directors.
Sorry.
I want to say
Yeah,
that before I
thank
move
you.
on to my next bit.
Yep. So the other part, at the last Personnel Board, we made the proposal that we were looking to change the names of assistant directors to service directors. And just to let you know, the reason why we haven't made that update, the consultation on that particular item is due to finish on the 8th of October. So as soon as that consultation, at the moment, we haven't had any feedback to say that we wouldn't be making that change. But as soon as we finish that consultation, and there is sort of no particular, I don't think we've got anything that's come back regarding the name, we will then make that change ready for the Constitution Review Working Group.
That's really where I wanted to come in, because Stephen and I have the joy of sitting on that. There are a couple of points, and it would be really helpful if they could be recorded in the minutes, so that when it comes to that Constitution Review Working Group meeting, I can remember what it was I picked up at this meeting. One of them is on page 34, which is in chapter 8, and it's about the procedure for the appointment of the head of paid service, which is 8.6.7.
Yep.
What it doesn't seem to cater for is where you haven't got a chief executive at all. So it says the chief executive will arrange the meetings, but if your chief executive has died or something, and that's why you need a new one, you haven't got a chief executive to do it. So some tweaking of the wording.
Yep, that's fine. So that
in there. And then on the following page, the length, duration of the meeting, I think we've changed the Constitution elsewhere. Rather than say it will stop at 10:30, we said the meeting won't last longer than 3 hours or something. Did we do that? Yeah, that's something we consider.
We've only changed that specific bit for council. The rest of the committees are still 10:30 and can go to 11.
And I think that is something we will be looking at in the Constitution Review Working Group to make them all consistent, because it's ludicrous to have a hard stop at 10:30. Say if you started at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or you started at 8:30 at night, doesn't make any sense. So that was another point. I didn't understand what had happened to Appendix 2, which is on the next page, page 36. It's just got a red thing saying Appendix 2. Is that?
I think it's just the way it's the formatting.
Oh, right.
So what's happened is I've tried to sort that out, but it wouldn't let me delete the page.
Okay, right, so it's just a
Yes.
spare page. Right, that's
Spare
fine.
page.
This section is Appendix 2, isn't it?
I don't know. I think that Stephen just asked for clarification. At the moment, council starts at 7:30, runs to 10:30, which is 3 hours, and then has an extra half hour. And all committees should be
Well,
consistent.
then
Yeah.
there's a problem with planning, isn't there? Because it
Yeah,
starts at
planning
7
is-
and never ends before
Yeah,
11.
planning is a different type of committee. So I'm thinking about the ones which are not audit or planning or licensing, which are slightly different.
Quasi-judicial.
Yes, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
but we need, where we've got that time in there, we need to have it consistent in all the places in the
Yeah.
constitution. And I don't think it's in there for planning in the same way.
So it
Yeah.
formally has to stop at 10:30, but you can vote to
Yes.
continue to 11.
Yeah,
So the mechanism is the same,
yes,
but the timing would be
Yeah.
different.
yeah, no, that's fine. It's just making sure that we don't, it doesn't make any sense to have a time depending on things start at a different time.
Yeah.
Having the same cut-off period is not sensible. But then the other things are a bit further on. In, I think that page, it's 60 something as well. Did you say 63? Was it
Page 63.
3? Yes.
Page 63.
No, I don't maybe. Right, I mean page 68. Page 68.
Yeah.
There's a little B at the top, and it says no candidate so related to a councillor or an officer. And then it says him, her. Do we want a him, her, or do we want a there?
They, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a very good
Yeah,
idea.
I
think
think that
that-
up
yeah.
in other places.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
slightly further down that page, there's a little C near the bottom of the page about ensuring anyone applying for the post. And then it
Posey.
ends wrong with Posey. Yes.
I had
There's
to-
there's a typo in there.
Yes, I think you picked that up.
We discussed that, yeah.
Position, I think that's supposed to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Um,
want a posy rather than a post, which is,
Yeah. And I'm just looking, checking whether there's
It's
anything
become
else.
abundantly clear why you enjoy
Yes.
constitutional review.
I think that was probably it. The other things, there's a lot of deletion in there, which I agree with. I think it's not necessary to have all that in. Yep.
Super. There are a few other small details that we've discussed
I've got them written down.
in various, various places with what's coming to this committee this evening with apostrophes and things like that. But yeah, it will go through your
yeah.
3 Cs. It will
Yeah.
go through your 3
So just to make the
process,
final
yeah.
commitment, we have looked at it, when you look at a document lots of times and it just gets a bit blurry. So we're going to actually look at it together and go through it after we've had our feedback from this evening. Because I think, Chair, you also picked up on page 70, 15.5. You picked up there's one where it says chairman still rather than chair. So I'll make sure again the other ones I've corrected, but I hadn't corrected that particular one. And I think we just need to have a quick look at just from the point of view of continuity of language. So again, more eyes on it, the better, because in that way you get that sort of feedback. So I appreciate the feedback I've had, and I'll make those changes.
Perfect. Okay. Yes, I'm very grateful that you're updating the chairman language to refer to the chair.
Yeah.
Super. So those were really useful comments. Are there any comments or thoughts about this constitution change?
It's all excellent. Go ahead
Yeah.
with it.
Super. So thank you very much, Louise, for all of the work that you and your team have done to this. Do I need to read out the whole recommendation on page 25, or can we propose second and vote?
Yeah.
Yes. We could be here some time. Super. Okay. So shall I propose the recommendation in the agenda, page 25, agenda item 29, seconded by Prue, and all of those in favour? And that's everybody. Thank you very much. Super. So final item of business this evening is corporate social responsibility, and Sunny's going to introduce this in a minute. Those of us who've worked for corporations are quite familiar with this kind of policy. It's something that some of our neighbouring councils have. This has got some features which really fit it to a council. It's very much geared towards building relationships, not just within the organisation itself, you know, team building for the council officers, but also to build relationships with those in the wider community, understand more about the people that we serve in the community, so that we can do a better job as a council. So over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the purpose of this is to look at how we can almost give some back, but also benefit ourselves as colleagues. So I think that fits with the themes in some of our people strategy about we care and we belong. It is that sense of belonging. So a key aim, obviously, of the council is to provide efficient and effective services within our current financial constraints. But then looking at how can we increase what we do within the borough, but also increase our sort of support and our team building internally for colleagues. There is an error in this slide. So there's a mismatch on the numbers. So it is actually, the request is for 2 days per annum, not 3. And I think what we would then do is look to review it. But ultimately, it is about demonstrating the benefits for the borough residents and really focusing on having people at the heart of everything we do, which I know we've spoken to you all about through a lot of the other things that we're doing, that is really what's important, and it will benefit the residents. But actually, through team building, we can do this and go out and give some back to our community. And I think we've talked more latterly on a couple of other things. If you come and work in our environment, you really need to understand what our aim is. So actually this will then fit, we were looking at our corporate induction, and this is all sort of neatly fitting together in terms of working in this environment, is that until you actually come and work for a council, you don't necessarily know what we do. There's a perception that we collect bins and we might fill potholes and we might look after people, but actually it will really, really help us grow and benefit everyone. So yeah, I'm not going to go through the details because you've had the slides, so would welcome any questions from you all.
Super. And I think Stephen put his hand up first, followed by Prue.
Mine again isn't a question, Sally. It's just a comment, a supportive comment. I think this is an extremely good idea. I'm really pleased to see we're doing it, not just for the reasons you stated, but the council has been pursuing actively and vigorously a partnership agenda, working with external bodies, including our voluntary and charitable sector. And it's going to help, I think, our officers to understand how voluntary bodies function if they volunteer some of their time to help those bodies. But it also helps us as a council to establish our credentials in the eyes of those partners. They can see that we are serious and we are trying to engage with our community more effectively and more thoroughly. And you know, one of the big challenges of the partnership agenda is shifting the perspective of council officers, so they see working with others outside the organisation not as a chore, not as an add-on, but as something that's actually quite fundamental to the way in which we operate in the modern environment in which we face very constrained budgets, and we really do have to work with others if we're going to be able to deliver for our residents. So I think for all of those reasons, as well as the reasons you've stated here, this is an extremely good and welcome move. So I'm very supportive.
Super, thank you very much. Prue.
Thanks. Sort of 3, I don't know whether you call them points or one of them's a question. I think it's important that these activities are in the borough. A lot of our officers don't live in the borough, and therefore it's quite a good way of getting them to understand the communities that they're serving better. Obviously, we do have a lot of officers do live in the borough, but for those outside, particularly with a lot of working from home, which I support as well, it gives them a way of making sure they know what's going on. The second thing is about the reporting. So on page 93, you're saying regular reports monthly will demonstrate how many people have volunteered and where. I just wondered who will see the reports, and I think that, yeah, what will you judge as success, I suppose. And the third thing was, this applies to people who work directly for the council. Is it something that we can ask you to recommend to the council-owned companies for consideration? Yeah, that was 3 points.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to those points. Couldn't agree more about sort of people that don't live in the borough. As you know, I don't live locally, so first thing for me would be I'd be absolutely having my service out there as a team building day. And really getting to understand parts of the borough and the bigger picture, particularly because we're a support function. We don't always see the great stuff that goes on out and about in our communities. We support the services that do. So I couldn't agree more with that comment. So I think it's integral to understanding the borough's makeup and demographic as well, and what our services actually do day to day. So absolutely. The reports, I'll be working with Sarah O'Connor, who's head of communities and partnerships. So Sarah and I'll link together quite strongly on this to make sure that we're working with the VCS and making sure we're getting that reporting through. So we will start to look at that data. And if we see there's sort of an increase in a want on people wanting to do this, and I think we should also be encouraging people to do this, we would then potentially look at, originally we were looking at maybe a little bit more time being approved, but I think we've started with this for now just to see how it goes, and we can keep that under regular review. And as the council-owned companies, yeah, we can certainly share that with them, with the likes of, but then, you know, I would want us to talk to the likes of Optilis, because we could then go and work with them as well through some of the stuff that we do. So I think there's a mass opportunity, and the fact it is contained within our borough, it's not sort of saying you can go and volunteer in another borough or in outer London somewhere. It is all contained within ours. So yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly add, I think also we can share with the economic development team the policy once we've got some proven success. And perhaps, you know, using those different committees where they were bringing different businesses together. I mean, there are other businesses that probably do it better than we do, but it's equally just maybe some of those smaller companies that haven't maybe thought of doing something like this, that we could again looking at sharing that. And I think again, just from the point of view of our data, Sally's absolutely right. It's about proof of concept, I think, in the first sort of first set of data. But what would we would want to hopefully be able to do is then share that success with regard to just reporting back how many days have been supported within the community. So again, we perhaps to that commitment.
I was thinking of something like an annual report to the personnel board on how it's going. Is that what you had in mind?
Fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something that we had discussed actually, isn't it? That we would have a regular report back. Stephen.
Just as a way of amplifying the point I made earlier on about how this will play well with the partnership agenda. I recall at a meeting, I think it was the AGM of the Woking and Volunteer Centre last year, people there raised the question, would the council consider corporate responsibility time off for members of your staff? So this is something they very much would value, and I think by doing this we'll be seen to, although it's accidental as it turns out, we'd be seen to be reacting to what they suggested, which I think is another positive.
We need to.
Maybe it's not so accidental.
It's not accidental.
Sorry, before someone comes in, the AGM, the next AGM of the Volunteer Centre is next Monday, and I am attending. So.
Fantastic.
Would I be able to say at that we are doing this?
Yes.
We agree.
Yes.
Super. And Sarah, sorry.
Yeah, just firstly, as somebody who has been a volunteer manager for a small UK charity, hugely welcome this. I was going to ask one of the questions was, would it be limited to the to the borough for and that makes complete sense. If some of the if some of your employees are unsure people may be unsure who to go and volunteer for or what's available, will you be inviting organisations to maybe come to you to say, look, we would love an opportunity to have you come if people are unsure about where they might choose?
So our preference is to work with the Woking and Volunteer Centre and have almost that central hub.
Oh, okay, right.
So
that
we would
makes
channel
sense.
it through that.
Yeah.
I think also then as an organisation, and part of the stuff I've talked with Sarah O'Connor is almost skills matching. There'll be some way, you know, as a team building day, you'd quite happily take the service out and, you know, is it a bit of the environment and go do some litter picking or some of all of that. But then it's also that skills match. So say one of our partners was desperately needing a bit of advice about how would they process things from a HR perspective, we would have that skills in-house. So we'd try and allocate some of the asks that were coming through the WVC and then see if we could skills match and tailor to what their need is. But then for the bigger things, it would be working with them and saying, look, you know, we'll come out and help you if it was a care home or any of that as well. It's all, you know, it's about putting that back into practice, but ultimately the borough benefits from it. So
Brilliant.
Yeah. So just to clarify, our chief executive and our director asked us to specifically look at this policy to bring it forward because it was about looking at our partnerships agenda. So it was looking at joining those pieces up, and hence the reason why we're working with Sarah O'Connor. Yeah, so
But from my perspective, it's accidental in the sense that I at that meeting said that would be a really good idea. So it now looks as though I was somehow instrumental in this when I wasn't, I'm afraid. I can't claim any credit for it, but it's great that we're doing it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Lou?
Yeah, just a question around how you envisage it working, because I've heard you talk about team building days a bit. So will it be like a mix of team building organised things, but then also individuals might be able to do their own thing if there's, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. I think it's not a one size fits all approach with it. So we'll allocate the time per employee and how that's made up of. You know, if I took my service out, that's potentially 25 of us for a day. So we know that that's 25, you know, days given back.
Yeah.
But then it could be I've got somebody within my service that says, actually, I want to go and help the children's charity that we have in the borough for 2 days. Can I do it?
Yeah.
So it'll be made up of that.
And will sort of people that manage teams then be encouraged to organise a team building day?
Yeah.
Because I know in my company it wasn't encouraged, it was mandatory.
Yeah. So
you will take your team on a corporate responsibility day.
I think part of it would be talking to our heads of service through our managers network and through ECLT, so that cascade that from the top to get them to support it. And then I think as well, also part of it, I'd like to do some case studies. So when we've had a team building day, we'd want to publish that within our colleague bulletins, potentially share it on our website. So we're raising that profile on how we're doing. And then that should in turn encourage more to do it as well.
I can't help being enthusiastic about it because it's just such a great thing that Sally's written. And I would like to take it one stage further. We have our colleague conference and we're now looking to run that annually. And again, if teams have done that, it would be great to have them up on stage telling the story of what they've done. Even if you could bring the actual volunteer, the partner in, again, because I think if people can see the value and hear it not from us, but from the people that have actually done it, I think it has a huge amount of value. So yeah, there's lots of ideas and enthusiasm. So
I think as well is that we were on a session last week and one of my peers who's the head of service said, oh, I've sent some of my team out to do some work within a care home. And he said, at first they were a little bit reluctant because they didn't know what they were walking into, and he said actually they love going now because they can logically see what the bigger picture is about why we're here, and that's the support service. So it just helps you get that understanding of why we're in this sort of environment, because it's ultimately about giving it back to our communities, our boroughs, our residents. So I think it will help people really see what's going on, the struggles that our partners face, and this is ultimately why we're doing it, because they don't have an abundance of volunteers, but is giving that back to everyone. So yeah,
Always round, this is a great scheme and I'm very pleased we're doing it. I think our partners in the charitable voluntary sector will be very pleased we're doing it. I think it will, as you just said, Sally, help officers to understand the importance of these relationships with the voluntary and charitable sector, they're going to become more and more important as time goes on, I fear. So we do need to try and accustom officers, I think, to interacting well with the voluntary and charitable sector. And I think lots of officers want to do that. But obviously, if you're very busy and you've got an enormous amount of business as usual to get through, it can be very tempting to see anybody outside the organisation as, well, that's a bit of a nuisance. I'd rather focus on what I've got to do rather than this nice add-on. So the more we can accustom people to working with our partners, the more I think they'll start to see that bigger picture themselves more clearly. And I'm hoping that this will be good in itself, but good in some of the collateral benefits it brings. And just on the point of collateral benefits, Council next month, in October, is going to be, well, it's almost this month now, will be asked to approve the new community vision. Now, the community vision is something I feel passionately committed to, and it's a good thing in itself. But the collateral benefits it's brought us in terms of understanding better our partners and how our partners operate, the constrained environment in which they work, their understanding the constrained environment in which we work, it's been a fantastic learning experience, I think, for everyone involved. And it's really strengthened our relationship with the voluntary and charitable sector. So it's a good in itself, but it's brought all these collateral benefits. And likewise, I think this will do the same.
Super, thank you. Lou?
Or just on the point of collateral benefits, and they said damage, the opposite.
Yes,
It's really what you were saying. The team building part of it is huge, and especially when you've got people working from home and virtually and remotely, you know, that opportunity to get people together and the benefit that they get out of that. And there is because I've managed teams do it. There is a bit of reluctance. There's a bit of I've got a lot of work to do, but actually, you know, when you get them there, it's usually a really good day out. Day out, but it's a day out. But the other thing as well, I'm pleased what you said about working with the volunteer centre, because and Sarah probably knows this after what you've just said about working for a small charity, but I've been on the end of the phone to small charities and the company says, I want to bring 25 people next Wednesday, what have you got for me? And you're like, panic. A, nothing. B, there's nobody to manage it. And C, we haven't got the space for 25 people, but you don't want to say no. So, yeah.
I think as well, we started to talk. We've had a group of our colleagues in today from our service level forums. We started to have a focus session on our wellbeing, and actually that also plays a part in the wellbeing agenda for us. It's something different. Is that team building exercise? It's taking time out from what you do see as a really busy day job, but you're still doing something together, and it is I believe it is good for mental health well-being as well, to try and focus on something so that you're getting to talk to your colleagues a bit more, but also doing something that's a bit different to the day job. So I think it will be very well received, and we will start to encourage and work with ECLT and our managers network to start to share that if we can get it approved. So yeah.
Everything we've said this evening suggests you might get it approved.
That's brilliant. There don't seem to be too many comments against it. I wanted to ask one canned question, so it's one that I asked when this was in development, and I thought it'd be useful to bring it up here so we have it on record. So one of the things that we really want to be seeing as a council is people coming forward as volunteers, and school governors are enormously important. So I was initially quite surprised to see on what's in page 92 of this pack, there's actually school governors are excluded from this scheme. So in other words, you can't use your school day to act as a school governor. Could you give us the answer on that one? Thank you very much.
The request for school governance is handled within a separate policy. There is stuff within our Green Book and main terms and conditions that's already linked to sort of time off for being a school governor. And there's other things like magistrates as well. So that's statutory and already laid out, which is why it's sort of excluded from this, because there is already paid time off for that.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, and that's useful to just get on the record. Super. Are there any more comments or questions? And if there aren't, can I propose the recommendation on page 85? That's agenda item 30. That we agree the principles detailed here and approve the paid time off for colleagues to support on corporate social responsibility. Seconded by Stephen. All those in favour? That's everybody in favour. Thank you very much. And I think that's the last thing that we have that we have tonight. Can I just I think there's an enormous amount of work been put into this. Really formally give our thanks, you know, Louise, Sally, both to you and to all of your team who've been involved in this, and the wider team within the organisation who have taken part. I think with the strategy in particular, a lot of people have clearly made valuable contributions, and we would love to recognise those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, much appreciated. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.